Okay. So, Shivai, good afternoon and welcome to the first of three Cymru'n Codi podcasts with candidates who are standing in the forthcoming Senedd elections next month. I'm Harry Rogers from Cymru'n Codi Cyngor, and our first candidate is Heledd Fychan, and she is Plaid Cymru's lead candidate for the Pontypridd Cynnan constituency and spokesperson for finance, culture, sport and the Welsh language, and has been a member of the Senedd for the past 5 years for South Wales Central. So welcome, Heledd.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's very good to see you here. So I'm just going to start off with a general introduction and question. So over a period of about 3 years, Cymru'n Codi and the Cymru Radical Left dialogue before it, as eco-socialist cross-party independence political movements, gradually developed the aim, production for the needs of people, planet and peace, not profit. My question is, to what extent do you and Plaid Cymru support this?
Well, when I read the manifesto you've put together and the work there, I think it very much aligns with why I'm in politics and why I think Plaid Cymru exists and the things that we hope to achieve. Because very much, we're pro-independence, as people know, but that's not for independence sake. It's just to ensure that we actually build a Wales that works for the people living in Wales, that we do take care of our landscape, but also that the way that we work internationally is really, really important. We've taken motions to the Senedd in terms of Palestine, for instance. We think it's really important that Wales does engage internationally. It may not be devolved to the Senedd, but we have that responsibility to use our voice. And we also have a long tradition in Wales, don't we? If we think we celebrated recently that peace petition of over 100 years ago now, Wales has always used its voice and we shouldn't be silent now, especially now that we have our own Senedd. It's really important that we do have those debates there as well, in my view.
I agree that it is really important. The Senedd is more and more important. So to move on to more specific parts of the programme, in terms of people, you've seen our headline aims in our short flyer, and hopefully you've had a chance to look at the detailed demands and policies in the full programme.
Yes.
How close do you think Plaid Cymru comes to taking these demands and policies forward? For example, on housing, we propose removing all profit from housing, public ownership of development, land and construction, council housing, controlled rent, assured tenancy for life, ending homelessness, and a constitutional right to a home. So,
how does that align with Plaid Cymru?
Yeah.
I think it's crucially important, and hopefully our manifesto comes out tomorrow as well. So I hope that you will see that many of those demands are there. And also in terms of the right to a home, I think that's just a fundamental, isn't it? And seeing at the moment, housing are one of the issues that I've seen most frequently over the past few years as a Senedd member, of people coming to me struggling to find somewhere to live or facing fear of eviction, not having that security. I've seen firsthand the impact it has on people. So unless we are able to move to a way, it's very, very clear we need to be investing in more social housing, that we need to really look at when we talk about affordable housing, what we mean by that, because a lot of the affordable so-called homes built in recent years have been out of reach for many, many people. And I just think we need to look at what we can do here in Wales differently. And I would hope that people will see that that commitment is very much there. We're not looking in terms of, some of the things you've seen through the cooperation agreements. You've heard landlords perhaps complain, or second homeowners complain about some of the things that we've done, because fundamentally, it has made it much more difficult, the way the things have been regulated in Wales, for people to access that basic human right to a home. So even in opposition, we've taken action and pushed Labour to do so, and we'll clearly make housing a priority if we are lucky enough to form the next government. And, the way that we see it as well is housing is so fundamental for other areas as well, aren't they? So the retrofitting of homes, things like that are really important, because the impact of a cold, damp home on health, for instance, and how much that costs the NHS is something we're acutely aware of. I've represented an area that has been flooding countless times, and the amount of homes that I see that are damp since then, and how that's impacting people's health. I do see this. It's not just about the housing. It's about actually the wider implications of having a proper, secure home that is fit for purpose. And that's very much at the forefront of our thinking if we are in government.
Thank you. That's a very comprehensive answer. Question 3 that I've got on my list here is about saving the planet. You may have noticed that we argue for a net zero emissions target by 2030. And this is a tough ask, but so is climate collapse. We argue that it's needed to concentrate minds on action and not fine words. So would you and Plaid Cymru support the target that we've recommended?
We would have loved to see net zero by 2030. Our concern, and Rhun has communicated this previously, is that we've seen lack of action really for the past 5 years, and that some of the things are taking longer because we think that's achievable. And if we can do it any quicker, we will. Of course, we will. For me, there's a huge frustration on this. I mentioned flooding in my previous answer. Climate change is happening right now in our communities. It's not something that we have to fear in the future. Those scenes that we saw in Valencia last year, and Germany, and people dying, that could have happened here in Rhondda Cynon Taf in 2020 easily. We were lucky it didn't happen, but it's not a million miles away. So unless we take action, our rivers are so dirty, our seas, all of this. If we are serious about wanting an independent Wales, well, I want one rich with biodiversity, where we are taking into account the impact of climate change and taking action. And I'm just really sorry to have seen, in the 5 years I've been there, I've heard lots of warm words from the government, but very little real action to the extent that we need it to happen. And the fact that Reform are saying, well, that climate change doesn't exist. Well, I'd like them to come to some of the communities I represent and try and tell them that flooding that was once in 100 years is now so frequent that people are struggling to get through winter every year because they're fearful for their lives. I hope they knock their doors, because the people will tell them quite clearly how climate change is impacting them right now.
Yeah, I mean, You're absolutely right. When those floods happened, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, so the supplementary question then, given that you're talking about um, um, some of the issues that are in our demands and policies, do you think any of those could be achieved over the next 4 years?
I think they have to, and we need to see progress because otherwise, we'll be equally guilty of what we've seen from the, well, current government, still current at the moment. And, prioritizing biodiversity, collective ownership of land is really important. Food production. I think there's a real role for farmers here in Wales to play such a key role. We've seen land that would be excellent for food production, actually external companies trying to take over that land rather than looking for public ownership as well. And I just think it's a missed opportunity for our economy as well. It's all interconnected, isn't it? Because if you look at rural poverty is a huge issue in Wales and something that's forgotten often, but there is an opportunity here. It's not just something that will cost Wales money to do. It's a necessity, I think, to tackle a number of the problems we have, including child poverty, rural poverty, and so on.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move on to another question. And this is question number 4. Imperialist genocide, death and destruction is clearly part of current capitalism, and the horrors are daily. We believe that it is a political imperative for the Senedd and the Welsh Government to take a stand against militarism and for welfare, not warfare. To what extent do you think the Senedd should do this? And would you take a personal stand?
I think the Senedd does have a role, and even though issues like defence are not devolved, I think we need to look at what our role is in some of the wars happening internationally at the moment. We can't just say, oh, well, we're innocent on all fronts when there are weapons being made in Wales, as we know happened in Gaza. So I very much think, we have been very strong in the representations we've made in the Senedd, try to get cross-party consensus on this. And I think it is very clear that the Senedd has a role. And obviously, for an independent Wales, this is a conversation that needs to happen because we need to decide. And it is for the people of Wales to decide. It's not for Plaid Cymru alone to decide. It is very much for the people of Wales. And I think that's the conversation we need to have about, clearly there's huge risks internationally now. The global threats are there. Cooperation between nations is essential. I think we've weakened ourselves through Brexit by the way that the UK has become so isolated in the world and dependent on a special relationship with the US. Well, that doesn't exist. There's no going back there at the moment. I think we need to be honest about that. The fact that the UK government thinks it's okay to send the King and Queen over at a time where Trump yesterday was threatening genocide on a huge scale. I'm sorry, it's really important that we use our voice and as a Senedd. And I think what I've been disappointed at times is to see the Welsh Labour government pull its punches when it comes to international affairs and not make a strong statement that they should be doing. I think people would see a huge difference with a Plaid Cymru government where we will use our voice as our MPs do in Westminster to ensure that the views of the people of Wales are there, but also that we help shape what Wales's views are on international matters. Reform have talked about scrapping the nation of sanctuary, for instance. Well, as we know, Wales doesn't have any say on immigration, but we do have a say over how we welcome people here and help them feel integrate, be able to contribute to really feel part of Wales. And, I make no apology for defending the nation of sanctuary and that approach. I think it's in line with who we are and our values as a nation. And long before devolution, those were our values. And I think the Senedd should hold on to those values now at a time when they're needed.
Well, that brings me on to question number 5, and quite neatly, actually. Cymru'n Codi is an eco-socialist movement that supports an independent and a Republican Cymru, both as a democratic aim, but also as a main way of being part of challenging the power of capital and meeting the needs of people, planet and peace. So clearly, this question does lead on from your last answer. Do you support Cymru independence? And if so, why? And how can the question be raised in the Senedd over the next 4 years?
I very much support independence for Wales, not in a narrow sense, but because I think the UK doesn't work for Wales. That's very clearly the case. You know, the way that we're structured at the moment with devolution does not work for the people of Wales. To see child poverty rates go up, no, that's not acceptable. To see how education is, how the healthcare system is, that our most vulnerable are struggling more and more. And actually, even with the powers that they have in Scotland, that they're able to do more in this regard, whereas we are so dependent on the whims of a UK government that will never prioritise Wales, will never, ever do so. So I think it's inevitable. Also, looking what's happening in Ireland, you know, it's not incomprehensible to think that Ireland will become united. We don't know what the situation will be with Scotland. But I think clearly we can't carry on as we are. We can't. You know, if we are lucky enough to form the next government, we will utilise the powers we have as much as possible. But we do also need to start getting the things that have long been agreed that should be devolved to Wales, like police and justice should be devolved, our rail infrastructure, and things that are basic that will help our people, help the planet, help where we want to get to as a nation. I really struggle with some of the unionist mindsets that seem to think that one day a UK government's going to wake up and treat Wales as an equal. That's not going to happen. You know, it's wishful thinking. And I don't understand why we are so happy to settle to be treated less equal within an union that's supposed to work for everyone. So for me, I see the future of Wales as an independence nation. No surprise, perhaps, as a Plaid Cymru member, but the kind of Wales it is will be shaped by the people of Wales. And you know, I'm lucky enough in the job I've been doing for the past 5 years to see people do amazing things in our communities, to take matters into their own hands, to campaign on issues that matter. But that's despite the government sometimes, not because of the government. And I think if we had a government that really works for people, works for our communities, you'd see that difference. So I do believe also, you know, Wales would not be insular as an independent nation. I think it would make us more internationalist because we'd have to be connected. You know, I've heard people say, well, what would happen with England? Well, of course we'd cooperate with England. They're our closest neighbours. We're interlinked. You know, how do other countries that share a border work together? Of course there's cooperation and it's normal in other parts of the world. I don't see why it would be so difficult for us to make it work here in Wales.
Well, thank you very much, Heledd. Diolch yn fawr. And that we might actually meet up sometime and have a chat. It'd be really great. That's the end of this first interview. We're going to carry out 2 more in this series, and I think what we'll do is we'll put them all online at the same time so that people can actually, you know, get a real choice of what they're looking at, and when they're making the decisions about who is the best person to vote for to stop reform, or whatever reason they're choosing to vote. We hope that they're going to do more than that, and they're actually going to look at the policies that are outlined by the candidates, and we hope that these interviews are going to help people make that decision. And thank you very much, Heledd. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I always enjoy chatting about these things, and it's important that people have choice. But I think we do, as progressives, need to think about the threat of reform very carefully. And hopefully we'll see parties come together post-election that want to see a positive and progressive Wales.
Thank you.